Once there was an old carpenter who was ready to retire. He told his boss that he wanted to leave the construction industry and go home to enjoy time with his wife and children. The boss, reluctant to let go of his good worker, asked if he could help build one more house. The old carpenter agreed. However, it soon became apparent to everyone that his heart was no longer in his work. He used inferior materials and did a sloppy job. When the house was finished, the boss handed the carpenter the keys to the front door. "This is your house," he said, "a gift from me to you." The carpenter was shocked and embarrassed. If he had known he was building his own house, he would have done things differently. Now he had to live in a poorly constructed house. This story teaches us to cherish the opportunities in life, to avoid squandering them carelessly. Otherwise, we may have to face the consequences of our own negligence and regret our hasty action. During our journey to the countryside, we saw an old farmer putting the cattle feed up on the eaves of a small thatched house. Curious, we asked, "Grandpa, why don't you put the cattle feed on the ground for them to eat?" The old farmer replied, "This grass feed is of poor quality. If I put it on the ground, they would disdain it. But if I place it just within reach on the eaves, they will strive to eat it, persevering until they finish every last bit." Most people live in speculation and anticipation. If you know everything about your future, perhaps everything would seem tasteless. Edward was an unfortunate man. In his childhood, due to poor family conditions, he lost the opportunity to study and could only make a living by selling newspapers, working as a grocery store clerk or assistant librarian. Many years later, he finally started his own business, but ended up burdened with massive debts after guaranteeing for a bankrupt friend. When he was preparing to use all his assets to pay off the debt, the large bank where all his wealth was stored suddenly collapsed. His career, his wealth, everything turned to dust in an instant. God's joke was played too big this time, and Edward collapsed under this heavy blow. He fell ill, and all the doctors were unable to treat him. Helpless, he had to write his will and wait for death. "Well, since I'm going to die anyway, why not think of some happy things?" Edward comforted himself while recalling those trivial moments of happiness from his childhood to adulthood. As time passed day by day, strangely, instead of dying, he started getting better day by day. Several months later, he, who could not even move before, was able to get out of bed and walk like a normal person. With his recovery, Edward realized a truth. He no longer dwelled on past failures or worried about tomorrow's setbacks. Instead, he focused wholeheartedly on seizing the present day and working hard. As a result, his career rapidly developed. In a few years, he had become the chairman of the Vents Industrial Company. No one can change the facts of yesterday, and no one can predict tomorrow's circumstances. But today is something anyone can grasp. By seizing each moment of today, we can live a fulfilling life. For years, a lady incessantly complained about the laziness of her neighbor across the street, saying, "That woman's clothes never get clean. Look at the stains on the clothes she hangs in the backyard. I really don't understand how she manages to wash her clothes like that." It wasn't until one day when a keen-eyed friend visited her that it was discovered that it wasn't the neighbor's clothes that were not clean. The observant friend took a cloth, wiped off the dirt on the lady's window, and said, "See, isn't it clean now?" It turned out that it was her own window that was dirty. It is easier for a person to notice others' mistakes than their own, and it is simpler to blame others than to reflect on oneself. Only by wiping away the dust on the window of one's own soul can one objectively and accurately perceive the external world, without distorting one's understanding due to unclear vision and mind.